All right, guys, welcome back to the TCI studio. Been a boring December here for Davis and I. Not much going on. You know, Clemson wasn't in the ACC championship, going to the Cheez-It Bowl, but we thought we'd come in here and talk to you and try to stir something up.
Oh, we're not breaking down the Cheez-It Bowl today?
No, we're not going to break down Cheez-It. That is coming. Look for that. We're going to break down the best version of Cheez-Its. We'll line them all up here and do a little taste test. How about that? Extra toasty. He's already got his pick. Yeah. All right, we're going to talk to you a little bit today about Brent Venables heading to Oklahoma, what the Tigers' plan is to fill the void, and just that whole drama. That went down earlier in the week. You know, Brent, last week, I guess we were tracking, you know, his interest and what might go on there, and Brent was still on the road recruiting at Clemson.
Weird.
And then it became apparent that, our big question last week was, we know Brent would be very interested and would have to strongly consider that, but we weren't sure whether he would be the choice.
Yeah.
But then late last week, it broke that Oklahoma made a heavy pursuit for him.
Yeah, and I don't think that's any surprise at all. I mean, you mentioned, Venables probably considering that job, and I think that's because his name has come up so often over the years for a head coaching job, and you just wondered. Now he's 50 years old. If he's going to do it, when's he going to do it? And if he's going to do it, it should probably be now. I mean, if not now, when? Because that's the one job. Obviously, with him being familiar with the Big 12, been a long-time assistant at OU under Bob Stoops before he came to Clemson. That was the job that so many people believe that he's always wanted. If he was going to take a head coaching job, that was going to be it. And it was so crazy how everything has seemingly happened as fast as it has. But Oklahoma's rolling along, booting Lincoln Riley.
Yeah, nobody predicted that. Right?
In the middle of the night, basically, leaves for the head coaching job at USC, and all of a sudden that comes open, and immediately the speculation there's that job that Brent's wanted, and would probably leave for if they did come after him. And sure enough, a lot of things happened, but then last Sunday night, the word starts getting out, and you've got Oklahoma reporters there at the Norman Airport. People start gathering. They start they brought out the cheerleaders and the band. You say, okay, something's going on here.
Yep.
And so we were able to eventually get confirmation on that,
and he was not able. That one, went down, and the coaches can't control the timing of these things. He didn't have a chance to go talk to his players and do all of that, which coaches like to do. Cristobal delayed his going to Miami so he could talk to his players that morning. But as you said, there was like a parade, and they had everything set at Oklahoma. Right. They needed to put an end to that because the Lincoln Riley shock. And Venables has always been hesitant to take head coaching jobs. He loves it here. He loved it here at Clemson. He loved the environment. He's a big lake guy. Family loved it here. He had Tyler on the team now. Jake was on the team, moving on. We haven't confirmed everything, but we assume Tyler's going to end up going with him. But we'll wait on confirmation on that. But this, as you said, he went from home, which has been Clemson, to go back home.
Yeah, right.
So it was kind of some ways an easy decision.
Yeah, and I tweeted this after it became official Sunday. But I think if you're Dabo Swinneys in Clemson, all you can ask for is what Brent's done over the last 10 years. The fact that he was loyal to Clemson in a profession that is increasingly not so. And was patient and waited for the one opportunity that, again, he really, really wanted. And not to mention, I think The Athletic was reporting this morning that his salary is $6.4 million annually. So he's almost tripling the salary that he was getting at Clemson. So hard to blame the guy.
No, and he's never been all about money. Obviously, he's been well compensated here, but that's a big, huge difference. And if it doesn't work out, you're there for 3 years. Okay, we're good. He'll move back to the lake and just do things there. So that was the departure. Then, of course, the big question was, okay, what is Dabo's plan? What is he going to do? One thing we know about Dabo, and he's talked a lot about it over the years, he has all of these things planned out. If Venables leaves, which, as you said, he's been a candidate a number of times, so that's something Dabo's had to be prepared for. He's prepared if Tony leaves. We got confirmation from obviously the first folks to know the plan a lot of times is the recruits, because these guys are getting ready to sign on Wednesday, the ones that are signing early.
Coming in a hurry.
So they have to know the plan. So the first folks to know this is the staff has to go tell that. You know, we reported earlier in the week that Wesley Goodwin was on the road recruiting. Mm-hmm. We didn't know yet whether he was part of that short-term plan or that long-term plan. We have talked to several commits, and we've also talked to some folks here at Clemson and been able to confirm, no, that is the plan that, you know, the staff is telling these folks, is that the plan is going forward. Wesley Goodwin, Mickey Conn will be co-coordinators. Mm-hmm. Goodwin will move on field, soon take the linebacker position. And, you know, Goodwin, hopefully you read our story, I think yesterday. Brent Venables was nice enough to send me a quote on Goodwin and, you know, what he is and what he thought of him. And, you know, he raved about him. He said he's one of the top young minds in all of college football. Mm-hmm.
Innovative was the word he used.
Innovative, right? Yep, that was one of the words. And, you know, everybody we've talked to, and we have heard that over the years. We know that at one point Kevin Steele told some folks he was a football genius. Mm-hmm. So he's got the incredible football mind. So it's going to be interesting to see him now be able to pull some of that, those levers himself. You know, the one thing he doesn't have is he doesn't have that track record of, oh yeah, I put these guys in the NFL. So recruiting is going to take a little bit of a hit, probably. And we've already seen a little bit of that. But again, Dabo's planning for the long term. Mm-hmm. And Dabo's like, okay, if we lose a recruit or a couple of recruits, you know, we can replace those. We can go to the portal, we can go other places. But what are your thoughts on the plan going forward?
Well, it's interesting you just mentioned long term, and I think that's important because I know there are fans out there that are sitting there thinking, wait, Wesley Goodwin, why is he going to promote some, you know, relatively unknown analyst guy that's never, you know, had a plan in calling plays, all of a sudden going to promote him to replace maybe the top defensive coordinator in college football? I think one thing to keep in mind is that you do have a system here. Even though Brent has gone, you now have this defensive system that these assistants have been learning under him for 10 years. Right. And Wesley's been around for most of those.
Yep.
So, you know, if you're Dabo, you might be thinking, you know, we've got why do I want to bring in somebody totally different, have all these guys relearn the system when they know a system that's been highly effective, one of the, you know, most best defensive systems in college football and schemes and maybe even some terminology. I'm sure probably some terminology will change, but so much familiarity with what Brent Venables has done over the years, still with the staff that's still in place. So you might be thinking, you know, if you're Dabo, you're thinking, why do I want to change, you know, if it's not broken, no reason to fix it. So that might be part of the reason.
Well, and one thing I'm interested to see is, you know, do they put Wesley on the field? Do they have Mickey Conn on the field? One of the big things, and it's worked good for Clemson, and there's been some times like some of the playoff games where it hasn't worked good. One of the things Brent Venables did was he always made those late calls on the field. He would look at how the offense was set up, and he would try to get those adjustments into his defense and have them moving around and, you know, leaving that quarterback guessing. And that's, you know, he's making those calls himself. That's not something where you got time to call up to the press box. And so somebody, if they continue to do that, somebody's going to be on the field making those last split-second calls.
That's a good point.
And to me, that's going to be where we see, you know, is that something they can replicate from Venables? And if this guy's football genius and if Goodwin's the one making those calls, Clemson may be in great shape. The truth of the matter is we won't know how this plan works for a couple of years.
Yeah, there's no way to know until you go and try to implement it, you know? And another thing, too, that we haven't talked about yet that's going to be interesting is what is going to be the total fallout from this? How many assistants are going to follow Brent? Because we do know Miguel Chavis, who's in another off-field role, he is leaving to go to be his defensive ends coach at Oklahoma. How many other assistants might follow him? Who knows?
I have been told that from one football person very, very close to the football program that it didn't look like a lot of folks were going to follow him.
Okay.
A lot of folks had, you know, in fact, one guy I thought might be a candidate told me he doesn't think there's going to be a lot of that. He hadn't heard of anybody else yet.
Right.
But, you know, now Dabo's plans out there, so does, you know, one of these other coaches have a inkling to leave, and then, you know, we may have the same question with Tony Elliott.
Exactly.
Right?
Yep.
Because we may have his staff, and he may be more inclined to, you know, those guys now know the position coaches at Clemson, they know what their role's going to be.
Right.
And does one of those guys get an option to be a coordinator somewhere?
Exactly. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think Brent's the only assistant that's defensive assistant that's come off the road recruiting at this point because he's obviously taking another job. So that might be a telltale sign too. If you figure some of those guys were going to leave,
Yep.
Dabo wouldn't have them on the road recruiting for Clemson.
Yep, and we put a picture up this morning. I do not remember the recruit. Sam, or I think it was Sam, wrote the story. Dabo was there yesterday, had a recruit's in-home visit, and the entire defensive staff was there with Dabo.
Right. Yeah.
So as you said, they're all out there and they're doing their thing. So, the good news is we know the answers now. Dabo hasn't officially talked about them. We do have a press conference on signing day with Dabo. My guess is that'll be our first media availability. And we'll probably have a little bit of recruiting questions and a whole lot of questions about all these changes.
I was just about to say, I wonder if he's going to be asked 1 or 2 questions about this recruiting class.
I think he will. He'll have a lot to talk about, and we'll understand his plan, and he'll be able to give us some, thoughts on his reasoning.
Yeah.
As we said, nobody knows. A lot of fans are upset, and I'll tell those fans, how many of y'all were upset when Clemson hired this guy named Dabo Swinneys to be the head coach, and he had never been a coordinator?
Right.
That worked out pretty good.
It did.
So we don't know.
Right.
We'll find out, and we'll see what the recruiting fallout is and all of that. The good news is, we now have the transfer portal. Dabo hasn't used it a lot, but this is a great time where if there is some fallout, he's got another option to go fill that fallout that he wouldn't have had in the past.
Right. Yeah, I agree, and I think you're absolutely going to see them use the portal. I think this is the year where his whole, I'm not going to use the portal. Of course, he has, in his defense, he's always said, I've never been against the portal. We just haven't felt the need to use that, but I think that's going to change this year.
I think we'll see that, and we'll see when we see that. One little tidbit I'll add, and we'll finish this one up. When I was at the airport Wednesday, when Tony was leaving, we saw the West Virginia head coach at the Oconee Airport. We're like, okay, why is he here? Well, one reason is maybe to talk to some potential transfers. Lynn J. Dixon is going to West Virginia, so he could have been just here talking to him. He could be here recruiting. Who knows? But Clemson's going to have to step up that part of the program, which I think will make a lot of fans happy. So that's the skinny on the defense. Clemson loses, as Davis called, probably the best defensive coordinator in the country. They've got a plan in place, and we're all just going to have to wait and see how that plan unfolds the next few years. But definitely a bit major shakeup.
Yes, absolutely. And it's going to, like I said earlier, there's only one way to find out. There's risk with anybody you bring in. I mean, you can sit here and talk about, maybe you want a more proven name, maybe that might make you feel better. But again, if you're going to a situation where you're changing an entire system and everybody has to get used to learning something else, there's risk and reward with everything. So,
all right, guys, stay tuned to the Clemson Insider. We'll continue to cover everything as best we can for you guys. For the most complete coverage of Clemson athletics and recruiting, stay tuned to TCI.
This is Miles Murphy. Make sure to check out Clemson Insider's most complete football coverage. Nobody does it better.